Let's open with a quick prayer. The Lord be with you. Let us pray. Gracious God, we give you thanks for this day, and we ask your presence among us as we give thanks for this year and look forward to many more to come. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. So this forum came about out of a desire to speak with you all at least 3, if not 4 times a year. And so hopefully there will be a quarterly forum of some kind, even if it's a vestry election day or a parish meeting day, some moment where we're able to all gather together and talk about where we've been and where we're going. For today, I want to encourage you all to think about questions that you have. It's my intention, good intentions, you know what they are, that I'm going to speak for only about 20 or 25 minutes and then do Q&A. So be thinking of questions, and hopefully I'll actually stop talking. So let's do a quick review. So I've been here almost 10 months, and so in this last school year, we'll say, we've seen a number of really good things happen. So first off, our attendance has gone up, which is great. Our participation in ministry has increased, which is great. We've seen numbers in Sunday school increased throughout the year, which is also really good. And perhaps the easiest way to kind of quantify some really good energy going on is the refresh project that we just finished executing. And so for those of you who have participated in our refresh, we had over 200 members of the congregation or families in the congregation contribute to this refresh, which is going to make our worship spaces both here and in the parish hall really sparkle and shine. We're investing in our IT infrastructure, in the cushions so that your booties feel better, and all of that. Our goal was 600,000, and we exceeded 950,000. And so it was a wonderful thing. You should feel really good about that. And I think, because people have told me, that part of the success of this, not only did it make sense, but it was actually a very specific ask, right? It was clear what we wanted to do. We laid it out for you. And then if that resonated, you gave. And I think that is indicative of really the future of where we're going, right? So you all know that I am not afraid of talking about money. And so part of that lack of fear is because I grew up in a family that gave, and I know that for Nicole and me, giving is what compels us and invests us to really care about anything that we participate in, whether that's church or it's other organizations. When we give, we care more. And when we care more, we spend more time and energy. And when we spend more time and energy, then the transformative power of Christ really gets in us and changes us. And that's what I want for all of you too. That's what I want for everyone who's not here as well. When we give and give more, then we care and we care more, and that caring changes us because it really roots us. I want you to give enough to where when you hear something going on in the church, you think, wait a minute, I have an opinion on that, and then you let us know. That's what I really want, to a point. So, okay. A few changes that are coming this next year. Firstly, I want to make sure you all know that our vestry election process is changing. We noted this last February, but I just want to make sure that's all up and up. The vestry has changed the schedule of elections in order to allow for vestry members to have an orientation. It also gives the vestry a chance to serve for 1 calendar year. So you don't have that oddness of when people actually transition and take over. And so beginning in 2017, our vestry members will be elected, as well as others, diocesan convention and that sort of stuff, will be elected at the end of October. So we'll have a meeting in the end of October where we will elect all of our leaders, and then they'll have 2 months of orientation ahead of taking over at the beginning of the calendar year. That way we can say goodbye to everyone at Christmas who is rolling off the vestry, and we can welcome all of the new members on, and it's a nice, clean transition along with our fiscal year. And so just a reminder that we're doing that this year, which means we're going to start soliciting people to run for the vestry a whole lot earlier than usual. And so that's why we're doing that sort of thing. Other things that you have likely been hearing about and or thinking about, would be what's going to happen in the next few years with our actual church campus. Dominoes begin to fall in a couple years when the lower school of ESD leaves this campus and goes to their new campus off Merrill Road and off Midway in Merrill. That is scheduled to happen in the summer of 2019. We'll see. But that's what ESD is doing, is building out that lower school campus, and the lower school here is shifting. That gives us some pretty incredible opportunities. The first big opportunity is that our St. Michael Episcopal School can grow. If you don't know that the St. Michael Episcopal School is an excellent program, it's extremely competitive, unfortunately, to get in, and we want to make it easier for people to get in. Not only do we want to raise the bar of the quality of the school even above where it already is, but we want to make sure more people can participate in that kind of excellent formative program for preschoolers. And so right now, the school could basically double based on its waiting list. People are calling, I think probably before they're even pregnant, to put their names on the waiting list. And so it's great because a strong school will help us be a stronger church. And I imagine that that is just about the best way to invite people in to this church community. And that hasn't really been happening with any intentionality. It's been happening anecdotally, nice people who might talk to someone there about their church, but mostly there's been no structure. And so that's going to shift this coming academic year. We're going to have our young families in the church actually attend the orientation meetings for the new families at the preschool in order to invite them not just to come to St. Michael, but to come with them to St. Michael, to actually meet them there, to have shepherd families, so someone knows that when they show up here on a Sunday morning, someone's waiting for them. We're going to try and very intentionally incorporate those families into the life of this church. And that goes part and parcel with a lot of the emphasis that we're making in the coming years, which is about our kids. So you will see over the next 12 to 24 months a huge amount of growth and investment in all of our programming for children. Not only is that curriculum for Sunday school, but it's also going to be in our worship offerings and providing shepherds and partner families for families to get deeply connected. It's also going to be expressed in some of the ways that we invest in, say, our music program. We're going to be raising up a great children's music program that within 5 years, I want to really be the best in the city. And so we're going to be putting a lot of resources into this excellent Anglican choral program. Did I tell you all the story of being over in Rome last October and hearing the choirs sing? Whatever, I'll repeat it if you have already heard it. So I was over in Rome in October, and we were at the service with the Pope and the Archbishop of Canterbury, and they brought their choirs, right? The choir from the Vatican, the choir from Canterbury Cathedral. And it was sort of a lessons in carols style program, and there was a lesson that was read, and then the Vatican choir sang, and the Vatican choir is great. And it was this excellent Roman choral sound, which is a little modal, and it was beautiful. But then a lesson was read, and the Canterbury choir sang. And it's as if the heavens opened up. It was so good. And it really solidified in me what I want for all of our people, not just adults, but for our children too. If there's one thing that we really do well, it's that worship choral music. It is so good. And I want for our children to really live into that. And I think, along with the preschool, that a great children's music program is going to be a very attractive way for families to connect to this church. Maybe not necessarily all the families currently in the church will want something like that, but I think there are lots of families around in our community that will be a great access point for them. True music education, not just singing, but the theory and everything that goes along with it. And that's just a general emphasis on children and youth that we're going to be putting forward in the next couple years. Once the campus shifts, ESD leaves, our preschool the plan is our preschool would then move down to where the lower school of ESD is, which will allow them to effectively double. Once that happens, it gives us a chance to imagine what the rest of our campus could be. And so know that in the coming year, we're going to begin conversations about what we really could do here. There are certain moments in our building that simply don't make sense. Tight little hallways, choke points that make it really difficult to get through, especially if you've got any kind of ambulatory issue or you're trying to carry a child or usher people to and from. It's not easy. And so there should be some ways we can get creative about making this campus as easy to access as possible. Anyone know how many different ways you can enter this building? 14. At least. I don't know. There are probably secret ways I don't know about. But there are so many different ways that you can get in this building that it's difficult for us, in an evangelical sense, to actually welcome people into this space, right? We want to make sure that when they drive off the street onto this campus, forget the building, when they come onto this campus in their car, they feel like they're entering a different kind of space, a sacred space. And it's just magnified from there as they enter the building. And we want to really funnel everybody through an experience. Perhaps that's the best way to characterize where we're moving. We're trying to be intentional about the experience that everyone has when they connect to this church. Begins from the first time someone visits and goes all the way through decades later when we get to bury them. In fact, none of us are making it out of here alive. So, this is the great thing about a church, right? Start and end right here. We get a chance to actually walk with people through that integration into this community. I mean, you heard me preach this morning, you hear me talk about it all the time. Our culture, right, our social structure is no longer really Christian, and it hasn't been for a long time. So you can't point to anything that's happened in the last few years. But basically for at least 40 years now, we've more or less been an accidental Christian culture, but not really. We've become very secularized. And I find that to be okay. I mean, all things equal, it'd be great if it wasn't, but it's really okay. Only if we admit it. If we admit that there has been a secularization of our culture, then what it gives us is the opportunity to be different kind of Christian. There are some scholars out there that think that Christianity in the future has to look a little bit more like the Jewish tradition does today. Now, you remember I grew up in Florida, right? So I had lots of Jewish friends in Florida. And my Jewish friends all went to what they call Jew school on Saturdays, right? Do you all know about this? Right? Learn Hebrew, learn the prayers, learn the movements. You learn what it means to be Jewish. Why? Well, they're not getting it at school. They're not getting it on the news. They're not getting it anywhere else. And so they've got to go somewhere to intentionally learn. That is really what we have to start doing as Christians now too. Because this thought that perhaps the osmosis of the culture will make someone Christian hasn't been happening for a long time, and it is certainly not going to get any better. And so we have the opportunity now to be more intentional about that formation, to really take seriously what it means to actually train people up to make disciples of Jesus here together. Hopefully it makes us a little more evangelical, right? Evangelical. Hopefully it gives us the confidence to move forward with that kind of intentionality about what it means to follow Jesus. Not just some nicety, not just some moral compass, but to actually be transformed by Jesus. And so we're going to begin moving in that direction with more intentional offerings in Sunday school, a lot more Bible education, because what I really want is to scare the adults. So one of the things that you're going to see is that with kids, we're going to be so intentional with teaching them the Bible that it's my hope that anyone who's raising children in here will at some point feel very uncomfortable because your kids will know a whole lot more than you. And I want you to want to know more as well. We've got to know our story if we're going to actually follow Jesus. More future stuff. We have a unique opportunity that I'm trying to take advantage of. Because of our size in the Episcopal Church, we've got some opportunities to partner with some really great organizations, both here in Dallas and beyond. You will hear more about this in the future, but we have two organizations that we are now partnering with in very specific ways who will both be officing at our Lomo Alto office building. Just in case you don't know what that is, it's that square building kind of next to the field that ESD uses. We own that and we lease it, And 2 organizations are going to be moving in the next couple months. The first is SMAADallas. If you're not familiar with SMAADallas, they've been around for years, and they specialize in helping support teens and young adults in addiction recovery. They've been based out of another church over there, and they're losing their office space. And so they looked around, and I wanted to grab them up and get them over here to help us, in essence, sort of get real with some of the needs in our community, right? We are in a place in time in this city where addiction is a very real problem, and it starts much younger than I wish it did. SMAADallas gets at that need, gets at a specialized way of helping our teens and young adults, early 20-somethings, meet the need for addiction recovery. I hope that begins to trickle out so that we become a place for recovery for all ages. We do have a very small amount of recovery meetings each week for adults, but I want to have a whole lot more. If you've never been to a recovery meeting of any kind, we'll use AA as an example, I don't know that it's easy for me to articulate just the profound depth of spiritual reality that happens in that group. And I want that for more people. I think that's a way for us to invite members of this community into this church and promise them a real transformation. And so SMAADallas is moving into our building, and you'll see some fruits of that kind of effort very soon. The other organization here in Dallas that's moving in the next couple months is the Church Music Institute. Years ago, about 10 years ago, the Church Music Institute was founded here in Dallas, seeking to become the largest church music library in the world, and they have. And they have worked to make pairings of music with scriptures so that churches can use their resources all over the world. They've digitized all of this in an incredible way, even though they do have a large physical library. And they now host conferences throughout the year that help raise up both clergy and musician alike to do worship at a very high level, a very excellent level. And the Church Music Institute has been located elsewhere in the city, but will be here on St. Michael's campus in the next few months. Both of these organizations give us an opportunity to partner and work in new ways that St. Michael becomes the rootedness and the home for these organizations and all of the excellent work that they do both here in the city and around the world. Beyond that, we're talking with a number of other institutions, schools and seminaries, about how we can become a site to help raise up and train both people preparing for ordained ministry and preparing for lay leadership in ministry. And so stay tuned for those kinds of partnerships in the next year as well. Let's see. As we continue to change stuff around here, I just want to say a word of thanks. I like change. I've always been that kind of person. I figured out a long time ago that one of my character flaws is that no matter what I do, the first thing I ask afterwards is, how can that be better? And I learned a long time ago that a lot of people don't function that way and can feel sort of offended when the immediate thing I say after some event is, how can that be better? Not that it was bad, but I always want something to change and grow. As we have tweaked things here and there and changed stuff all over the place, I've really been stunned at how little pushback I've received. Really so little. And so I'm grateful to all of you for the confidence in this place to make changes for the future, for the vision that we need to continue to change what we do so that we can resonate best in the future. And I do not take for granted that I have not received a significant amount of pushback. I keep doing something and then I wait. And then I do something else and then I wait. And I keep waiting for that to be enough, right? And for it to sort of like push right there and everybody freak out. And I say, okay, we'll stop for now. But I really haven't reached that point yet. That says a lot about the health of this community. It says a lot about the confidence level here. It says a lot about what we can continue to do in the future together. And so as we do that, know how grateful I am to be here. Know that we're going to be doing a lot of stuff together for a long time, and that I'm just super excited to be a part of this journey with all of you. And so now, as I promised, look at that, 22 minutes. I'd love to take questions. If anyone has any burning questions that will help me answer the needs that you actually have. The question is, we are glad to hear about the increase in music, but limited by the loft. And so it is a limited space. And so I would love to invite all of you to imagine what we could do to change that space up there, right? We're going to very quickly get to the point where we can't fit everybody in the choir loft, right? I mean, I would hope that within 6 months, we're going to have a choir that just exceeds the space. And so we did that sort of thing in a previous church where I was, and we had to start rotating volunteers. That's fine. It's a good problem, but it's a problem I hope we have to solve very soon. And so I have ideas. I always have an idea. You know, I learned a long time ago, you need an opinion, I have one. I don't need to share it all the time, but I have one. I think there are some ways that we can actually increase the size of that loft without it being major, says the guy who has no idea about building stuff. So think about it. I think that I would love for you all to imagine, you know, those of you who are builders or architects or artists or, you know, I want to have that problem. I want to have to solve that problem. And so we know that it will happen sooner rather than later. Would love to be able to fix this space in some way that affords a lot more people participating in our music program. So to make it easier for the congregation to sing hymns, a hymn board. So a thing that actually has the numbers in the side of the room. We used to have it. Good churchy thing to say. Thank you for the idea. I will send that to the worship committee. How's that for a dodge? There you go. What else? Yes, which is why I announced it.
Right, so that's what
Yeah, so today, for example, there's one hymn, the sequence hymn is actually the wrong number in the bulletin, so I announced the right number before we sang the hymn. The problem is, in every church I've ever seen, whoever puts the numbers on the board used the bulletin for the numbers. So that would not have solved that problem. I mean, nobody's checking the hymn, they're using, so I appreciate the idea, and I think we should start using iPads, right? I won't say who, but I've heard lots of people tell me we should put screens over the Reredos. I'm totally joking. Listen to you all. That was so funny. Not putting screens, I promise. Yes. Can you ask us a more specific question? Okay. So questions about adult Sunday school and how we can perhaps create more continuity over time. It's a great question. I think that by virtue of our size and just the general nature of being Episcopalian, we're always going to have that sort of walk-in, drop-in, forum-style Sunday school. It's easy for visitors especially. It's also easy for people who just aren't here every week, although hopefully you'll feel more and more guilty about that soon. Also, with adults, what I'd love to be able to push on is regular small group experiences. So you all know, because Lowell has done such a good job of putting it everywhere, that Bill Murray and I just finished our doctoral programs. And so mine was specifically on the way that individual identity is created. And so specifically religious identity. And I looked at the last 50 to 60 years worth of social science research to show that individual identity is not shaped by being alone. And individual identity is not shaped by being in large corporate groups. Individual identity is shaped by being in small, intimate groups. About 8 to 12 is that sweet spot. And so if we're really serious about changing identity, if we're really serious about being transformed by the Spirit, then we have to create a structure in which all of us are in some kind of small, intimate group, some kind of small, intimate relational group. And if you aren't right now, I want you to be in one. And this takes commitment, right? If you don't think it's worth it, you just won't do it. And so part of this is going to be selling the idea of small groups to the majority of the congregation that just simply won't make it a priority. But I think we all know that it's true. If you think back about our professional identity, our social identity, all that stuff is shaped by groups of, say, 4 to 6 or 8 or 12, something like that. That's where we get who we are. And it won't change unless we're intentional about surrounding ourselves with another small group to help us shift into the future. And so stay tuned for that, because we're going to be investing in that in the future so that everybody here is connected. What I really want is for your participation in this church to be predicated on a small group. I want to be a big church of small groups, because that's really the only way we're going to actually change our individual identities. And so to your point, I would imagine, hopefully soon rather than later, that we would get to a point where your small groups are where you go for Sunday school. That actually is what happens. If you probably know friends who are in, Baptists do this really well, where you kind of join a Sunday school class, and then it's your Sunday school class for 50 years, right? You baptize each other's kids, and you marry them away, and then you bury each other. I mean, that's what you do together. That is really church. And you come to worship, yes, but what we just did or what we're about to do in this space is worship. That kind of church that really sustains us is the small group. And so I can imagine that we could get to that sort of model for most of the members that happens on Sunday mornings. Yes? And we will continue to. I agree. Small groups will be all the time. Most people will not do it during the week. And so we'll do it on Sunday mornings in order to get them into the habit so that when it shifts or when their lives change, they'll know that it's worth it. We don't have a lot of small groups here. Many of you are in one, which is why you're in this room, right? I mean, don't mistake that your involvement in a group in this church is why you care enough to sit here right now. But if you look around this room, what do you think, 200 people, 225 people are here? We have a lot more people than that. Those people are not doing this. And so although a minority of our group will do midweek small groups, the majority will not yet. And so we're going to start as a Sunday morning access point, because we can coalesce, you can basically put everything on a Sunday morning to get the ball rolling, so that they realize that it's worth the time and the effort. And then as things transform and change over the years, they'll have a much higher desire to commit to those midweek moments as well. But we're not going to stop any midweek stuff. We're just going to likely influence or emphasize Sunday mornings first. The question is, did you ask if we have a hiatus? Because we don't. Okay. So the question is, what are we doing with mission and outreach now that Hunter has gone off to the far wilds of Fort Worth? So I think, I love priests, they're sweet, but I think it is most effective for something like mission and outreach and formation and the others that we have lay leadership coordinating that. And so it's my very shallow plan right now. So the plan is very strong. It's my idea that where we'll shift is that there will always be a priest that has pastoral oversight of mission outreach, right, who's present and there and supportive. But what I'd like to be able to do is hire a full-time lay leader in mission and outreach for the coordinating and the logistics support on the staff. We're already going to be shifting to have some administrative help this summer, and that was in place before Hunter received this call to Fort Worth. And so we're going to be doing is getting that administrative support right away, and then also hiring some lay leadership in the near future that can help with the logistics and the coordination. And to your point about trips, I'm leaning toward creating what would in essence be kind of the coordinator of immersive experiences. Because if we consider things like mission trips, pilgrimage trips, even things like Curcio, hopefully we can get back into that, the logistics of someone going somewhere, 80% of that is all the same. What you do when you're there may be different, but all of the stuff that goes into coordinating information and payments and flights and all that stuff, it's all the same. And so if we begin to emphasize immersive experiences, which I think is really smart, then we can have someone who coordinates all of those immersions, no matter if it's mission or pilgrimage or something else. Because it can be the better the organization of a trip like that, the better everyone will come out in their experience. And so if we can kind of coalesce all of those efforts, I think it will help us grow the number of trips we do all over. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. Good. Come see me. I don't know how to summarize that. What Maria said is that my talk to the women's group was awesome. And, okay, and yes, I mean, so one of the things that I think that I'll offer is that not enough of us go do stuff when it comes to what would be considered classic mission work. And I'd love for more people to do that kind of stuff. I also want for us to not define mission work in that classic kind of paternalistic way, where we have stuff and we go and we help people who don't have stuff, right? That's what a lot of churches do, and that's very well intentioned. But I think that we can kind of evolve that idea, and we have gifts and can share our gifts. Sometimes that looks like we've got some stuff and someone doesn't have some stuff, and so we do that. But the broad effort is that we've got gifts here that we want to share. And that giftedness can also be getting people to join this congregation, right? Getting people to come to church, because again, that is becoming less and less the way of our world. And so mission field is a very broad. And doing anything to use our gifts out in the world, from the classic way that we understand that to perhaps a newer way for Episcopalians, I think everything in between is going to be a great thing for us into the future. And so don't worry, we're going to be pushing on the doing very hard, because you've heard me say before that I am less concerned that everyone believes, and I'm much more concerned that everyone does. Because I think it's in the doing that we actually shape our believing. And that's going to change all of us for the good. I apologize. Time's up. It's been so fun to see you all. So we're going to be doing this quarterly. And so as you have questions about what's going on in the church, bring them together. And of course, always feel free to email me or some of the other leadership to hear what it is that we're doing. Thank you all for being here.